you want to discuss how we deceive ourselves, because self-deceit is a characteristic of the human species.
Right.
And I was beginning to look at it from the point of view of pain, I think. I could go back and talk about the things that we've already discussed, like how people idealize themselves. And I think that comes out of being charged with wrongdoing. I think the children, when they're very young, learn to deceive, and that's a fact. That's a fact. Children can be deceitful at a very early age, and I'm sure Dr. Peterson could cite studies that show that. Children learn to divide themselves. James wrote about the bicameral mind, which is basically a mind that is split so that it can actually lie to itself. But there was a time, he said, in the development of the human species when we were incapable of lying. Maybe animals are incapable of lying. It seems that way with our dogs, right? I mean, they can't conceal themselves. Anyway, we seem to be able to do that, but I've also read deeply about this in the past in terms of existential philosophy and psychology. And Sartre would say that the schizophrenic, the psychotic, actually knows what's really going on. He's a witness standing behind it. Now, a lot of people say, wait a minute, no, he's just out of control. He's a mechanism. Sartre would say that there is a pre-reflective consciousness that stands behind everything. And personally, in my own life, I have found that to be true. Even under terrific emotional upsets, when I was a very young child, I remember being awake to it, to be watching it as a witness as well. Now, maybe that is the result of splitting oneself. So it's not the Atman, it's not the Son of God, it's not the highest state of consciousness. But it does have one thing in common with all of that. It's an emptiness. And there is this observation. Now, what a lot of people do, apparently, lots of us do, I'm sure, we find something that we identify with that really makes us feel worthwhile and significant. And we will defend that without looking into his heart to see if it's just false. And I maintain, personally, I maintain that the reason that happens with lots of people is that they are attacked. They are brought to the question of whether they're right or wrong. And some children don't want to be wrong under any circumstances, especially if they're conditioned to never have to face up to being wrong. So, you can treat a child with great love and compassion and still overdo, you can spoil the child. A thing that I know I would have done, I've made the quasi-joke, but my humor is very close to the truth. If I ever had children, if I ever had 2 girls or 3 girls, I would have spoiled them so badly that I would have had to put them into convents when they were 12 years old to protect the world from them. They would have been perfect eye taps. The Italian-American princess, which is an amazing creature. Wrongdoing, never taking responsibility for anything negative. It's always everybody else's fault. And that you can do by spoiling a child. And so I'm sure Dr. Peterson would really be able to address this with studies that show certain characteristics of individuals that are associated with self-deceit or lying. But personally, when I think of it, I wonder how we can deceive ourselves like that, because it's a self-deception, and it's part of the mind-body split. I think maybe it's the result of identifying a great deal with a certain thing, like the narcissistic image that you've created, that you don't want to have vulnerable and perforated and you have to give up. I mean, you want to be the social being, you want to be significant. Maybe that's where it is. And so your desire to be that version of yourself you think is now, applauded by the world or embraced or liked by the world, you don't want to lose that. So maybe you just blindly defend it, and that is what makes it look like self-deceit. When yeah, it is, but it's a turning away of the consciousness. It's just turning against the other to fend off the other. It becomes an aggression. I think that's the easiest way to defend, because when you're aggressive, you can become irrational, and therefore you don't have to have anything going on except the desire to defeat the enemy. I don't know. What do you think about all this? I feel it's all murky to me.
Well, I mean, you brought up a lot of good things, and I can segue off of several of them. So one thing that I've pondered is the origin of narcissism itself and why it would pop up, say, as a chemical effect, like a biochemistry effect of our species. And I think that in some positive way, it keeps us going and keeps us propelling forward, expansion and expanding as a person could, and maybe even if one is so focused on one aspect of improving themselves, and even in a shallow narcissistic way, it can push them towards something that could be perceived as better, and certainly as a species, as a narcissistic species, an authoritarian-based species, looking at kings and queens as higher beings, as if they're gods, right? How long ago did that start? And how it continues to go on as celebrities now, and even celebrity politicians now. I think that it somehow sets the human race up to survive, and not without cost, certainly. And I'm not saying that it's better than the alternative either, but I think that it's just the way that it is currently. I've just pondered it. So the origin of that is still it's a question in my mind as to what created that and how it's come to be. Nonetheless, we still have to experience it, and it doesn't really matter. It's something that we're experiencing on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis even. So what else? You had brought up something else that I wanted to talk about in the middle of that. I'm trying to remember it. I should have taken a note down.
Well, if you want to look at the origin of it, you can trace it back to the beginning in the Terrible Twos. That's when, as we know all this, how many people do not know this? Only people who've never read any of it, but any psychologist worth the salt is going to tell you that the Terrible Twos are basically a declaration of independence, because they're basically telling you, I know I am not you.
Right. And that goes into Krishnamurti's type work too. It flows into
everything
identification,
should.
Right?
Everything should. You're right. I mean, Krishnamurti is at the foundation of things, and that's where I try to live, because I can't understand anything unless I'm at the foundation. So the Terrible Twos. Here's this child. He's already awake to. He's a sentient being for a long time, which means that he's automatically is just responsive. So he likes something, he puts it in his mouth, because what's good is tasty. You know what I mean? He's in that oral stage with the mother at that. So, and then eventually he gets to be, a year and a half to 2. Usually it takes place in ordinary kids. And they start to realize that there's a separation. They realize that they are not the other. And they because they're so primary, they begin to express it by a kind of revolution. I revolt against you. No, I say no to you. I say no. Whatever you say, I say no. And they're just beautiful. And I'm a bad person. You know what I did.
God, throw me under the bus.
Yeah, I did it. But I don't know if that was a bad thing or not.
Well, explain the story to the audience.
Okay, we were up at Owen Bell, which is a beautiful park where there's a big running track and a baseball field, and then behind the track is some wooded area, and we were walking, you and I think we had Parrish, my dog, and you decided at some point you were going to say, no, I'm not going to go anyplace, and I'm going to stand right here. You were saying no. If you and I were always good pals, You didn't rebel against me very much, but I had to come into play, right? So you did it. So what I did was to tell you, okay, all right. After I didn't press you, I just said, no, this was not tell me if it was. Tell me if it was harmful. I said, okay, you stay here, and I will go home, and tonight you stay here, and I'll come back tomorrow morning. I'll come back and get you. Well, that changed things, but I don't think you suffered any. I didn't like put a. I didn't. You see, what's the key in hurting? Shame.
Yep.
And there was no shame, and then of course the one that I'm most regretful over, even though I'm so glad I did it. I know that sounds terrible. But you were doing no, 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 and I said to you one day, I said, John, can you say no? and you were smart enough to realize the problem. And I could see the smoke coming out of your ears.
Right.
So tell me, what did it do a bad thing to you?
No.
Do you still hate me? No, it
I
didn't.
think I remember that time.
Because there was no shame involved in it. You were just
Right.
stuck for a while. It's okay to get stuck.
So that segues into I'm remembering now what you had mentioned before.
Okay.
So I could throw myself under the bus with this comment too.
Good.
I've been told in my life at different points in time that I work extremely hard and that I don't work hard.
Yeah.
And what a thin skin I have to it,
Oh yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And I think a problem that I have with having somewhat of a creative mind is that people don't see when I'm trying to innovate while I'm in the process of innovating
Oh,
it.
cool.
And then when it comes out the other end, oh, this is great, usually, you know.
Mm.
It's like, well, you didn't see the hours and repetitions and things that went into it beforehand that look like absolute crap, that look like scribbles on a paper before I come up with something. But yeah, it's a huge trigger for me to hear that. And so I've learned in some ways to let go of it and to not think about hard work. It's to me it is a separative concept of working hard. For me it's just doing what needs to be done. It's not about proving that I'm working hard and making more out of it than it is and trying to have some spiritual competition with somebody about how much better I am than them for doing more.
No,
right?
no, you I understand some of your motivation on that. No, you don't do that. You don't idealize yourself that way, but you do it in some other way, and that's where your flow will be. I mean, that's for you to investigate.
Right, and well, so it took time to work that out in my mind because I've just, for the longest time, I would work as hard as possible and make too much out of the thing that I was trying to get done.
Where do you idealize yourself? Don't tell me, because you don't want everybody in the world, because there must be at least 1 million people watching this.
They might come after me, yeah.
No,
Well,
they won't come
7
after you, but
subscribers.
they'll come and laugh at you.
Right.
Because people just love to ridicule other people. You notice there's a strong tendency in our society, especially this society, a nasty tendency to out people in various ways and to show that they're frauds. And show me one person who doesn't have secrets. I mean, there's so much to say about this that's so obvious.
People build people up to tear them down.
That's a characteristic of the authoritarian personality.
Right.
It's part of the evolution. There's this ass kissing, and then there's an ass kicking. Every authoritarian personality has a pair of opposites centering, flowing around the center. And there's one where, like, you take Bormann, who was the chief of staff for Hitler. He was very close to Hitler. He was the biggest ass kisser in the world to Hitler, kissing his anus, okay? But to everybody beneath him, he treated them like dirt. And I have seen this close up. There's an instructor of languages that I met up at CCRI, and I won't name him, but he used to kiss my butt in so many ways. And then I'd see him relate to his students while we were in the general office where we all had desks. And he treated them like they were enemies, captured enemies. it was so obvious this guy's entirely asleep to this dynamic in himself. And he had a miserable life. I don't need to go into that.
Well, I'm going to the effects of that.
But there's the evolution of it. And eventually, if he found flaws in me, he would turn it. Like, for instance, he found out that I didn't know how to use a computer back then. You're a PhD. He started to talk down to me.
Mm-hmm.
You see, because this is what happens. I showed this to Jimmy. Somebody you and I know. He would do that with all his definitely authoritarian personality. I could give examples why. And then there's an evolution to it, and then he tips you over, and you're no longer valuable.
Right.
I mean, I've had this done to me as a teacher. I was put in the University of abuse called teaching adolescents. I mean, if you want to develop a thick skin, even if you are loved by some of them because of what you do, you're going to be hated by probably even more of them for what you do. That's good. I know I had some good years, but I also know that there were people who just have no respect for you. I come into your presence without any respect for you, and I already have all my mind made up about who you are. I walked into a classroom one time. It was a CCRI classroom. They were made up of 20-year-olds and 30-year-olds, nurses. But there was a youngish woman, probably 19 or 20, just out of high school, and a terrible student. It was a Kim Basinger lookalike, very pretty girl. And as I walked into the classroom on the first day, she looked at me and snapped her head around so fast, I thought she could have sprained her neck. And I knew she hated me from that moment. And she was a complete moron who never said a thing that was intelligent. And the other women in the class would just look at her as if she were just what she was, an undeveloped child. And the prejudice was immediate and irrevocable. And that comes with what? And you listen to her, she was so self-idealizing, she was never wrong about anything. And she was about as dumb, certainly the dumbest person in that class of 14. There were 13 nurses and her. And they would just like shake their head and cluck their tongues at some of the stuff she would say once in a while, because she was so ignorant. She was like a baby who didn't know the world.
Which would be fine if she wasn't,
Yeah, but she
firing at you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now, if she look, I'm an ignoramus. Think of what we don't know.
Right.
Okay. Think of what we don't know. Can I do something? I saw Jordan Peterson say. He was asked if he has any weaknesses. He says, yeah, mathematics and subatomic physics. He admits it. I mean, I can't do the math.
Right.
To really do it, you're going to do the math. And then you think that what did Niels Bohr say about it? Anybody who thinks he understands subatomic quantum mechanics is wrong. You're mistaken. You do not understand it because it's just so full of anomalies, right? It makes me, again, this is romantic, okay? It makes me think that proto-consciousness that Hameroff alluded to, that exists at the heart of the subatomic world, that emerges in various forms of this kind of consciousness. Like, to me, flames in a fire. There's this roiling, boiling ocean of energy, and things come out of it. I call them bubbles in the ocean, or I call them flames in a fire. And they are momentary entities and they fall back in. But where did they get all their stuff? Where did they get everything? My life is pouring out of the matrix right now. Your life, we're like things that grow out of the earth.
Right.
And if there's intelligence, according to what some people say, I've forgotten the name, they will tell you that all you really need is the kind of a brain that's receptive, and you will get intelligence.
Right, and it's integration of. So let's just quickly cover the topics that we're covering. So identity, one thing that we constantly discuss, audience, is identity, and in existentialist realm of identity, it's not so finite. There are so many intertwining levels of existence that you can think about. So human entity is born in an ocean of air, oxygen, and food that comes from the earth and becomes fingernails and skin and bone and experience in general. And some of us believe we have control over this in some way, which is, I don't know, we've discussed that many times. But where we, in a way, we are in an ocean of the experience of being on this planet. There's so many aspects to that we completely take for granted moment to moment. And so a lot of this discussion brings us back to the center of the moment, which, if there is any truth to be found, it's got to be in moment to moment experience.
That sounds good.
Right? And so when it comes to someone lying to themselves, it's certainly not them observing the moment. It's a projection.
Sure.
Based on ideas of idealization of themselves. It's some narcissistic projection of what they believe themselves should be.
And don't leave out, you're right there at the doorstep of what I wanted to say. Don't leave out vulnerability.
Okay.
They should be, because they certainly don't want to be weak and insignificant. There's this tremendous need to be significant in us. And it's a good thing for the most part, if we can put our lives into a direction where we achieve something that's good for everybody. Wouldn't that be nice? But a lot of people, unfortunately, don't think like that.
I just got the title of your next book.
Ooh.
Achieving Significance. And then you open it, and it's blank.
Can it be a novel?
Yeah. It's going to be very thick.
Achieving Significance. A novel.
That's it.
Well, who would star in it? Would you like to?
No, that's it. It would just say.
No, I can't.
Or how to.
I can't stop.
How to. Self-help.
I can't stop thinking, so I'm going to say something. And people say, wait a minute, he didn't say anything yet. Oh my God, he's done 35 pages, and I still don't know anything more than I did before. You can